Aid, for your opening comments. Director Wray, this morning it was reported that the FBI held back the digital key necessary to unlock the computers of hundreds of businesses and organizations that were subjects of a Kaseya cyber attack for almost 3 weeks. I want to hear why the Bureau would do this. Sharing the key sooner certainly could have potentially avoided millions of dollars in recovery cost. And I understand we need to both support cyber attack victims and bring perpetrators to justice. I understand that dual task that you have, but certainly I think this committee would like to hear your explanation for the Bureau's actions related to this key.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me start by saying that, as I'm sure you can appreciate, since we're talking about an ongoing investigation, I'm somewhat limited in what I can say here. But first, let me say that Kaseya, in particular, has been a great help to law enforcement and CISA, and they've joined in our response to the threat. And I will say there's no substitute, as you and I have discussed previously, for a private sector partnership in this space to stop the avalanche of ransomware attacks that we continue to see. We are constantly using technical information that we obtain through our investigations and pushing it out to enable effective defense. And we don't wait for our investigation to be done to do it. But when it comes to the issue of encryption keys or decryption keys, there is a lot of testing and validating that is required to make sure that they're going to actually do what they're supposed to do. And there's a lot of engineering that's required to develop a tool that requires to put the tool to use. Sometimes we have to make calculations about how best to help the most people because maximizing impact is always the goal. And whenever we do that in these joint enabled sequenced operations, we are doing it in conjunction with other government agencies, CISA and others. We make the decisions as a group, not unilaterally. And these are complex, case-specific decisions designed to create maximum impact. And that takes time in going against adversaries where we have to marshal resources, not just around the country, but all over the world.
Director Wray, you mentioned there were other federal agencies that were consulted. What other federal agencies were consulted in making this decision?
Well, again, I want to be careful here and not talking about a specific ongoing investigation, other than to say that when we are working as a general matter, in joint sequenced operations designed to maximize impact against an adversary, we, of course, work closely with our usual partners, prominent among them is CISA, but also members of the intelligence community and other agencies as well. And then it depends on the industry whether there might be other agencies involved.
And I just want to characterize your comments in explaining your actions. Are you saying that the key was not ready for the last 3 weeks, as was reported?
Again, Mr. Chairman, I certainly understand why the keen interest in the topic, and I'm trying to be as responsive as I can be while trying to be sensitive to an ongoing investigation. So I'm doing my best to try to be responsive and informative while also being careful not to, as Department of Justice policy prohibits me from, discussing an ongoing specific investigation.
Well, I understand that, Director Wray, but I believe this committee certainly deserves and needs a full accounting of FBI cyber activities, including classified activities. And I would hope today you could commit to me and to this committee that you would provide us with a complete briefing on this operation, but also the broader FBI cybersecurity operations and plans. Would you please commit to the committee that you would be willing to do that?
Happy to work with the committee to see what more information we can provide to be helpful and responsive, and I certainly agree that some of that might be better done in a classified setting, and so I'll have my staff follow up with yours to see what we can do to be more illuminating, recognizing again that some of this has to do with a very sensitive, ongoing, very much ongoing investigation.
I'd appreciate that. Secretary Mayorkas, on numerous occasions during this administration, as well as the last administration, I've asked for additional transparency regarding the ongoing border restrictions between the United States and Canada. I will tell you that my constituents are deeply frustrated by this, particularly given the trade and the relationships that people have across border. With the two of the busiest border crossings in North America are in Michigan, between Michigan and Canada. And those restrictions remain in place for Canadians to come across who have been fully vaccinated to enter the United States at land ports of entry. My question to you, Mr. Secretary, will you commit to provide my office and the public with the specific criteria the administration is using to justify ongoing restrictions for fully vaccinated Canadians at land ports of entry?
Mr. Chairman, I most certainly will. I know that you have expressed your concerns directly to me on a number of occasions, and I can assure you that we are reviewing our exercise of the Title 19 authorities to restrict travel through the ports of entry in light of the pandemic. We are very mindful of the economic consequences, and not only the economic consequences, but the consequences on family members who haven't seen one another for quite some time. And so I do make that commitment to you.
Could you tell some of the criteria now?
So we are looking primarily, Mr. Chairman, at the public health rationale, the fact that the arc of the Delta variant is not yet where we need it to be. However, the President did make an important announcement yesterday to provide relief to the 212F international travel restrictions in early November to vaccinated individuals. That is a first step in our ongoing review of the travel restrictions born of the pandemic and its current situation here domestically.
So why those, but not Canadians?
So we are taking it iteratively. We are looking at the situation not only at the ports of entry on our northern border, but also on our southern border. We have heard similar concerns with respect to border communities on the south and the impact, economic and family impact of the restrictions. We are looking at what we can do operationally, and we are moving in a very sequential and controlled manner. And I'd be happy to provide more information with you to you after this hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I appreciate it, Mr. Secretary, and we will want that information provided as quickly as possible, and we'll look forward to meeting with your folks on it. I need to step aside for an Armed Services Committee meeting. Many of us know what it's like to be double booked. I will pass the gavel to to Senator Hassan, who will take the gavel. But before I leave, I recognize Ranking Member Portman for your questions.